While Washington obsesses over LNG terminals and tariff wars, something colder and smarter is happening to the far north. Two democracies with far fewer people than the USA are redrawing the map, quietly, permanently, and while everyone looks south, the future is being rewritten above the tree line, beyond the news cycle. This video breaks down how Canada and Norway are slowly building a new Arctic order, one that bypasses the United States, reshapes energy scrutiny, and fundamentally rewrites the rules of global trade. We'll dissect why these countries are suddenly at the center of the world's coldest power game, and why their playbook is just so effective. If you're interested in the relationships between Canada, Sweden, and Denmark, that's explored in 2 additional videos. Check them out, I'll link them here. Here's how this video is going to flow. First, we're going to trace Canada's journey from junior partner to co-architect of Arctic infrastructure. Then we'll see why Norway's energy reliability is the model Europe trusts most. And finally, we'll unpack their joint plan, a new axis of ports, cables, and policies that could make the US less relevant up north than ever before. Before we get into it, as always, let's do a quick quiz. Which country now sets more technical standards for Arctic shipping? Russia, Canada, Norway, the United States? Drop your answer in the comments, we'll revisit it in the end. For most of the last century, Canada was the quiet neighbor, polite, reliable, and almost always following America's lead, especially on energy, security, and northern infrastructure. But here's where things get interesting. The Arctic is completely rewriting that script. And up there, in that vast frozen expanse, identity isn't just about culture or history or politics. Identity is geography. And geography is pure power. Think about what's happening as that polar ice retreats. Canada is suddenly finding itself right in the center of what will become the world's most important new shipping lanes. We're talking about routes where cargo ships will zip between Asia, Europe, and North America in record time. And for the rest of us, that could mean lower prices on everything from electronics to groceries, because when shipping is faster and cheaper, your bills often shrink too. But here's the real twist in this story. Canada isn't making this move alone. Enter Norway. Now you might think Norway, that little country with just 5.5 million people, but don't let the size fool you. Norway quietly became Europe's absolute backbone for gas and energy stability. And they didn't do it with military posturing or diplomatic drama. They did it the Norwegian way, with world-class infrastructure and those silent, behind-the-scenes diplomatic relationships that actually get things done. So what's happening now is absolutely fascinating. Canada and Norway are syncing up in ways that would have been unthinkable just a decade ago. They're coordinating on ports, on data routes, on energy strategy, and here's what makes this so clever. This isn't designed or even seen as picking a fight with the USA at all. They're not seeking confrontation or making grand proclamations. They're simply bypassing it. Not a rebellion, just a quiet replacement. What you're watching unfold is this subtle but incredibly durable axis forming right across the North Atlantic. We're talking LNG exports, undersea cables, satellite networks, all designed specifically for ice, not for Instagram likes. This is a completely new kind of global influence. It's slow burning, it's pragmatic, and honestly, it's almost invisible unless you know exactly what to look for. For those new to the acronym LNG, it means liquefied natural gas. That's primarily methane that's been cooled down to a liquid form, so it's easier to store and transport around the world. It's mainly used as a fuel for heating, electricity generation, and powering industrial processes. Anyway, since 2022, Europe has confronted 2 fundamental realities. Russian gas operates as a geopolitical weapon, and American LNG arrives with diplomatic conditions. Energy security now carries both a financial cost and strategic implications that extend far beyond market prices. The Arctic Energy Corridor represents an emerging infrastructure bridge connecting Norwegian energy surplus with Canadian market opportunity. New LNG terminals along Canada's eastern seaboard, particularly in Nova Scotia, are being engineered not merely to export to Europe, but to integrate directly into the continent's existing energy infrastructure. Norway operates the world's most advanced and reliable pipeline network, a proven system that has become the continental standard. Rather than attempting to replicate this infrastructure, Canada is positioning itself to connect seamlessly with Norwegian systems. Ottawa is pursuing this integration quietly but systematically, building the foundation for a long-term energy partnership. While Washington navigates complex permit processes and policy debates, Ottawa is implementing infrastructure decisions with the timeline of 2034, not the constraints of 1994. The strategic advantage is clear: predictability in supply, geographic proximity to European markets, and insulation from the volatility of American domestic energy politics. For everyday consumers, that means more stable energy prices and fewer surprises on your winter heating bill, because energy can reach markets more reliably and with less political drama. This development extends beyond traditional energy diversification. What's emerging is the foundational architecture of a post-American energy framework, the initial construction of supply and security systems that operate on north-to-north corridors rather than the established north-to-south dependencies. The implications reach beyond energy markets as well. This represents the early infrastructure of a system where critical resources and security arrangements flow horizontally across the Arctic, fundamentally altering the traditional vertical relationships that have defined North American energy geopolitics for decades. If you value independent, data-driven analysis like this, consider supporting House of Ellen Kofi. Every contribution keeps this work going. The Suez Canal, the Panama Canal, the Strait of Hormuz. Throughout history, the world's critical maritime choke points have shared one characteristic: warmth. But the Arctic is fundamentally rewriting that equation too. As polar ice continues its retreat, Arctic shipping routes can now reduce transit time between Asia and Europe by up to 40%, which ends up cutting weeks from traditional journeys and saves substantial fuel costs and millions in operational expenses for commercial shipping. Two primary routes are reshaping global maritime strategy: the Northwest Passage, threading through Canada's complex Arctic archipelago, and the Northern Sea Route, following Russia's northern coastline before terminating in Norwegian waters. Each route alone represents a transformative shift in global logistics, but Canada and Norway are moving beyond individual advantages towards systemic coordination. They're upgrading Arctic ports, investing in new fleets of interoperable icebreakers, and developing integrated digital infrastructure for real-time navigation and maritime safety protocols. Rather than improvising responses to changing conditions, they're establishing standardized systems for long-term Arctic operations. The strategic reality is equally significant. America cannot project traditional naval dominance in Arctic waters as it does in regions like the Persian Gulf. Aircraft carriers cannot function as icebreakers, and conventional power projection faces fundamental limitations in polar conditions. Canada and Norway are responding by building influence through infrastructure rather than military presence. Networks of underwater sensors, automated port systems, and coordinated surveillance capabilities. Their approach isn't designed to create a monopoly over Arctic shipping, but to establish mutual operational control and regional stability through technological integration and shared oversight. If this analysis is helping you see the world differently, hit subscribe. The House of L is a community of thoughtful, curious people, and you're very welcome here. Arctic security isn't tanks or fighter jets. It's data, sensors, systems that run even in minus 40 Celsius degree winds. Norway is the Arctic's quiet sentinel, world-class monitoring, ice-adept coast guards, and an emergency response system built for gas rigs, avalanches, and search and rescue. Canada brings scale, a vast, under-monitored canvas. But together they're building something that no single base or naval fleet could achieve: a layered, civil-first security web. This means shared ice intelligence, rapid response units, and even insurance systems for shipping and infrastructure projects. In effect, they're reducing risk not by threat, but by reliability. While the US focuses on military deterrence, Canada and Norway are constructing trust, systems that quietly set the new bar for what security means in the far north. No drama, no weapons, just standards that get copied worldwide. The Arctic realignment isn't stopping at the 66th parallel. In East Asia, countries like Japan and South Korea are rethinking their LNG contracts, not because they distrust the US, but because volatility is too expensive. China is studying these Arctic playbooks as well, not just for dominance, but to learn how to build resilient supply chains for itself and for others. Even African nations are watching, considering how cold climate logistics might help them future-proof their own ports and infrastructure as climate volatility grows. This is a new kind of soft power, but sharper and more operational. Not about cultural exports or rhetoric, but about setting the specs: terminal codes, cable routes, emergency protocols. In a world where the next 50 years will be shaped by who sets the defaults, Canada and Norway are quietly but irreversibly defining the actual rules. And Canada is no longer America's polite understudy. Norway is more than Europe's energy vendor. Together, they're constructing the architecture of a post-American North. They're not provoking the US, they're simply bypassing it. With port upgrades, new shipping standards, LNG and data corridors built to insulate, not antagonize, Washington still sees the Arctic as a distant afterthought, but Ottawa and Oslo see it as the future, and it might be. Their new order isn't loud, but it is deliberate. Resilience over dominance, collaboration over confrontation. Two mid-sized democracies changing the global game by simply playing a different one. So, as for that question from earlier, who now sets more of the technical standards for Arctic shipping? While Russia has scale and the US has naval power, it's Canada and Norway that are now setting more of the technical standards for Arctic shipping, especially through new infrastructure, updated shipping codes, and coordinated port upgrades in the far north. They're writing the rules simply by building the systems and making them the default for everyone else. The playbook is simple, not loud, but it is useful. And like the Arctic itself, it rewards endurance, planning, and method. In a world obsessed with drama and speed, the North quietly changes everything by simply keeping pace with the cold and with reality. What do you think? Is this the start of a new Arctic era, or will the US adapt in time? Drop your thoughts below. If you found this breakdown valuable, check out the linked videos on how Sweden and Denmark are also reshaping their ties to Canada, quietly and with purpose. This is House of L, where the maps and the narratives are redrawn. Stay cold, stay cool.